Hey everybody, Chef Britt here with atbbq.com, and today we are making grilled flatbreads with steak and zhoug. Okay, so I know that was a mouthful, there's a lot going on, but it's actually a relatively simple approach to your mouth, I should say. We are going to make flatbreads from scratch using some high quality flour and yeast. We are also going to be making those flatbreads directly on the grill, and we are going to be making a condiment called zhoug, and I'll explain that a little bit later. And then I'm also going to be showing you my techniques for basically any hot and fast steak that you want to grill. So let's just hop in and get the dough going. Today we're going to be using the 00 flour from Antimo Caputo. Now, one thing to note about this flour, when it comes to you, it's packed pretty well in the bag. So to get the best consistent results, I'm going to pour it all out of the bag and just kind of give it a little sift to reincorporate some air, and that way I don't have cups of flour that are just packed tight and kind of mess with my dough. We're going to be working with volumetric measurements today, no scale for this initial part, but I just want to let you know that's a great technique to get more accurate results out of your flour. So we are working outside today as well, and so I want to actually start with some cold water. I'm using ice water in this case because it's about 98 degrees out here. And we're going to pour all of our liquid ingredients into the bottom of the bowl first. I'm also going to follow up with a nice high quality olive oil, about about a quarter of a cup. Next, we're going to follow up with 5 cups of flour, followed up with a couple teaspoons of the great Jacobsen kosher sea salt, a couple teaspoons of white sugar, and about a tablespoon of this yeast from Antimo Caputo. This is a new product we are carrying. I'm so excited. It works just like a instant dry yeast, which is perfect for pizza doughs and the like. All right, now we're going to get that initial mixture together. I'm just going to go on low speed until everything is homogeneous and picked up off of the bowl. Okay, so we're pretty much homogeneous now. I could let this mix for another 10 minutes on this low speed, or I can just kind of crank it up a little bit for maybe 5 or 6 more minutes just to get that initial gluten development going. Okay, so we are about 5 minutes into our sort of secondary mixing. Now, just by the looks of it, I can tell it's just a little wetter than I like, and this is just the problem that happens when you work with volume. However, I know that you can kind of work with this dough, whether it's a little stiffer or a little wetter. So I'm actually gonna roll with this today. What we need to do now is the bulk fermentation aspect. So we're gonna just let this rest covered for about 30 minutes before we divide it and get it rolled up into some balls. So while we wait for the dough to do its bulk fermentation, let's go ahead and create the zhoug. Now, zhoug is something very similar to either like a salsa verde or a chimichurri. It's based with cilantro, and I already hear the grumbles from the people out there that hate cilantro. Well, you can use parsley, you can use mint, you can use like a combination. It's whatever suits you best. I love cilantro. Another thing about this zhoug is that it's very spicy, so we're gonna throw some jalapeno peppers in there. We're gonna get some really great heat out of some Aleppo pepper. But the secret ingredient is actually cardamom, and it gives us that Middle Eastern flair. So I'm going to be working with whole cardamom pods. Now, you can use ground cardamom if you prefer. It's just what you have on hand. I'm gonna use a mortar and pestle to kind of get a more authentic experience. Right now, I'm just going to crack open the pods and release their seeds. Okay, so we can see there's some little seeds. There's a lot of flavor in there, and there's actually a lot of flavor in the pods themselves, the husks, that is. And you can actually grind that up into your zhoug if you prefer. I think I just kind of like having a little pure texture. So I'm going to just kind of grind this up to really release the seeds inside this pod, and then just pull out the husks once I feel like they're pretty much vacant. I think I'm ready just to pull out the husks. They're basically just kind of starting to float to the top anyways. If I see any little seeds, I'll go ahead and return them back into the mortar and pestle. Okay. It smells incredibly fragrant, guys. If you are not familiar with the smell of cardamom, it's actually used a lot of the time for baking, and it has this really floral note, kind of similar to like lavender, but a little more pungent. So a little goes a long way with the cardamom. So to that, I'm going to add a couple teaspoons of cumin seed, as well as 1 teaspoon of this Aleppo pepper. Now, if you can't find Aleppo, you can absolutely use any other kind of crushed red pepper that you like. Aleppo is just probably one of my favorite red peppers. We're gonna grind this down into a nice fine powder. So we're in a pretty good state here. To that, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of nice kosher salt from Jacobsen Salt Co. And I'm going to add about 4 cloves of garlic. Now, like I said earlier, we're gonna be finishing this with an immersion blender, but I really like the action of creating this spice blend and sort of mincing the garlic in with the spices. It kind of opens up the garlic, it opens up the spices, everything starts mingling really well. And it's just a great technique to learn how to make a sort of garlicky paste that you can actually just turn into a rub if you wanted for some meat, or something to add to a marinade or a dressing of sorts. I'm gonna get in there and just kind of smash up the garlic a little bit. But those natural oils are gonna start releasing and create this sort of paste. So I'm gonna just go ahead and scoop this out. It smells so incredible, guys. Really, this could be the base of so many other things. So it's kind of been fun to experiment with this a little bit. Okay, to that, we are going to add some fresh jalapenos. You can go less or more if you want something extra spicy, or you just happen to have hotter or milder jalapenos to play around with. But I'm just gonna go ahead and just do like some real rough chops, get them in there. I also wash my hands after handling these, so don't worry about me touching my face or anything. Another thing to note, you can absolutely char these and throw them in there in that way and get another depth of flavor. But I think I'm gonna get enough of that charred flavor between the flatbreads and the steak that we're gonna cook. So I'm gonna go fresher and just keep those untouched. Okay, so I've got a couple bunches of cilantro here. I'm just gonna go through and kind of just hack off the main bits here. A little bit of stem is okay. A lot of stem is probably gonna be a little too woody for the final product. So I'm just gonna go through and just get the majority of what I can get out of the bunch of cilantro I have. Now we're gonna just cram pack it into my quart container here. The final addition is going to be 2/3 cup of this extra virgin olive oil we have. Now this one says that it is best paired with meat, and so I'm gonna believe what they say, because I'm gonna serve this with steak. It's a very fragrant olive oil, so I think it's gonna lend quite a nice flavor to the final product. Let's blitz it. Now you can blend this down as much or as little as you like. I kind of like a little bit of chunk in there, so we're gonna keep it that way. So one thing to note, you can also sort of adjust the texture by adding more or taking away some of the olive oil. But you basically want something that is very much like a pesto or a chimichurri or a salsa verde. It's just whatever you prefer. And again, you don't have to use a mortar and pestle to do that initial process. You can literally throw everything into a food processor or a blender of your choice and get the job done that way. Okay, so we are back to the dough now. I'm gonna go ahead and throw down just a little flour. Since my dough is just verging on a little too wet, a little too sticky, seriously not a big problem. You just gotta learn how to work with it. So we'll get it all ready to scale. We're gonna get this scaled into 2.5 ounce portions, give or take a little bit. And we're gonna get somewhere close to just under 20 portions if we go this route, depending on how much you kind of air over or under that 2.5 ounces will kind of determine. But you can also just shape it by grabbing what feels like a good smaller dough portion. Okay, so before we round these out, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little oil onto a sheet pan and just kind of rub it in. And this is just gonna act as my barrier so that my dough doesn't stick. This is great. This is where I can feel the dough is not too wet, because just a little pressure and the gluten starts acting the way it needs to be. I'm gonna just continue rolling these out until they're nice and round with sealed bottoms. So you don't wanna see any sort of gaping hole. If you need to use a touch of flour, feel free to do so. So once you've got all of your rounds made, just put a nice little light coating of some more oil over the top. And this is going to help in a couple different ways for handling later, but also just to kind of keep them separated from each other. So feel free to sort of kind of grease up your hands and move that oil around the outside of each round, just to prevent them from sticking. Now, your dough can also just be ready to roll by this point, but I want this to be a little easier to handle, so I'm gonna actually just go put it in the fridge for a half hour just to really set up. But you can also let them sit in the fridge covered for really up to a couple days. And another thing too, you can actually freeze them at this point and just pull out what you need a few hours in advance and let them come to room temp when you're ready. So I'm gonna go pop these in the fridge. I'm gonna pull out our steaks so we can start prepping those, and I'm gonna go ahead and fire up the grill. All right, today we're gonna be using the Napoleon P500 RSIB. I'm really excited because I've technically never done this recipe on this particular grill, but I know that I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna make it work. So we are going to be using the charcoal insert today. Got some really great lump charcoal in there. I'm gonna go ahead and get the burners on high, and we are going to just get this charcoal white hot before we start doing any grilling. So now we're gonna move on to prepping the steaks. I've got a couple nice meaty ribeye steaks here. We're just gonna pat those dry, both sides. Now this is my technique for just doing a nice clean steak over high, fast heat. So this is great for any charcoal grill or any way that you are gonna do direct grilling. I'm also gonna heavily salt the whole surface of each steak. And I think people think I'm over seasoning by this point, but a lot of this salt is actually just to help create the caramelization that we want in the end. I'm sorry, probably not the caramelization, but more like a Maillard reaction, the browning that we want. So this is gonna help pull out the moisture, bring it to the surface, and sort of activate the proteins a little bit. Another thing to note, I'm just gonna let these come to room temp, which it's really hot out here, so hopefully it'll be closer to about like 70, 75 degrees when we're actually ready to grill these. But you can use this technique on any cut of steak that does well over that high, fast heat. Okay, so you can see there's some residual moisture that's been pulled out of the steak itself. So just to let you know that that reaction is normal. So we're gonna go ahead and just go right on to the grill. Hot, fast. Ooh, Lord. All right, so what we're looking for here is that Maillard reaction. We're looking for that beautiful browned crust. Before we flip the steak, really, we wanna make sure we have that beautiful Maillard reaction. We're also gonna need a really nice thermometer so we can get that perfect internal temperature that we're looking for. I'm aiming for somewhere between a medium rare and a medium for the purpose of this video. I'm gonna go ahead and just give those guys a little 90-degree turn. We're about 95 degrees. But yeah, we have almost all the color that we want. So what I'll probably do is just move it over here to this indirect area just to kind of get it heated through to the point that we like. All right, so we are temping really close to that medium rare temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it off now and let these rest a little bit before we slice them up for our flatbreads. So now we're gonna prep our flatbreads to get ready for that hot direct grilling. I'm gonna use copious amounts of oil, and that's gonna help me stretch and sort of maneuver this dough onto the grill. So with oil on my hands and on the sheet pan, I'm gonna just ease it into its shape. I like using the sheet pan because it's a really great way for me to visualize how big I want it. It's like the perfect sort of width. Once you've got it relaxed into that shape, then you're ready for the grill. And we go. So we're looking for it to bubble up a little bit here, and it will get those grill marks. It won't take long before it wants to release. Ooh. It's a hot grill today, guys. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep moving fast. It really doesn't take long, and we can sort of finish them out on this indirect side as well. You always kind of want to have two zones when you're working with a bed of charcoal, really. Look at that. All right, and you know what? I just realized I've got a little feta left over from another project in the fridge. So I'm gonna go ahead and just melt a little bit onto these for a little extra flavor. Ooh, Lord, that's hot. And we'll just close the lid until it's melted through. So let's get this steak off the bone. We'll give give it a good slice here. This is beautiful. It's got a nice pink color. It's hot all the way through. It has an actual crust. It's got that nice char, that flavor from the charcoal itself. And ribeye is probably about one of my favorite cuts of steak. No more fluffing. Let's just go ahead and build a nice little flatbread. Put a little zhoug on there. You could even kind of treat this like a pizza and turn the zhoug into a sauce for a bed, but I'm just gonna kind of eat it like a street taco kind of. So we'll just fold it up. Okay, yeah. At first I was kind of like, I don't know, it might be a little too charred. No, it's actually kind of nice. It's bringing a bitterness to that super savory like steak. The zhoug is spicy. It's kind of hitting me in the back of the throat. It's actually a little on top of my tolerance, but it's exciting enough to where you kind of just want to keep going back for a little bit more. And the feta is a nice salty touch, maybe a little too much, but really you can kind of play around with these ingredients all you like. The bread is really fantastic too. All right, well that wraps it up for me today. I hope you guys learned something along the way. We put all of our recipes at atbbq.com/thesauce. And if you want to check out any of the products that we used today, head on over to atbbq.com. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.